Section 2 of Astounding Stories 16, April 1931. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Mark Thornton, Miranda, New Zealand. Astounding Stories 16, April 1931. Monsters of Mars, Part 2, by Edmond Hamilton. Milton turned to the other two, with face alight with excitement. "These Martians have some supreme ruler they call the Martian Master," he said quickly, "and we're going to go before him. As the first visitors from Earth, we're of immense importance here." As he spoke, the Martian official before them had uttered a hissing call, and in answer to it a long shape of shining metal raced into the vast hall and halted beside them. It was like a 50-foot centipede of metal, its scores of supporting short legs actuated by some mechanism inside the cylindrical body. There was a transparent walled control room at the front end of the body, and in it a Martian at the controls who snapped open a door from which a metal ladder automatically descended. The Martian official gestured with a reptilian arm toward the ladder, and Milton and Lanier and Randall moved carefully out of the cube chamber and across the floor to it, each of their steps being made a short leap forward by the lesser gravity of the smaller planet. They climbed up into the centipede machine's control room, their guide following, and then as the door snapped shut, the operator of the thing pulled and turned the knob in his grasp, and the long machine scuttled forward with amazing smoothness and speed. In a moment it was out of the building and into the feeble sunlight of a broad metal-paved street. About them lay a Martian city, seen by their eager eyes for the first time. It was a city whose structures were giant metal cones like that from which they had just come, though none seemed as large as that titanic one. Throngs of the hideous reptilian Martians were moving to and fro in the streets, while among them there scuttled and flashed numbers of the centipede machines. As their strange vehicle raced along, Randall saw that the cone-like structures were for the most part divided into many levels, and that inside some could be glimpsed ranks of great mechanisms and hurrying Martians tending to them. Away to their right, across the vast forest of cones that was the city, the sun's little disk was shining, and he glimpsed in that direction higher ground covered with a vast tangle of bright crimson jungle that sloped upward from a great half-glimpsed waterway. The Martian beside them saw the direction of his gaze and leaned towards him. "No Martians live there," he hissed slowly. "Martians live only in cities where canals meet." "Then there's no life in those crimson jungles?" Randall asked, repeating the question a moment later more slowly. "No Martians there, but life, living things," the other told him, searching for words. "But not intelligent like Martians and you." He turned to gaze ahead, then pointed. "The Martian Master's cone," he hissed. The three saw that at the end of the broad metal street down which their vehicle was racing there loomed another titanic cone structure, fully as large as the mighty one in which they had first found themselves. As the centipede machine swept up to its great door opening and halted, they descended to the metal paving, and then followed their reptilian guide through the opening. They found themselves in a great hall in which scores of the Martians were coming and going. At the hall's end stood a row of what seemed guards, Martians grasping shining tubes such as they had already glimpsed. These gave way to allow their passage when their conductor uttered a hissing order, and then they were moving down a shorter hall, at which end also were guards. As these sprang aside before them, the great door of massive metal they guarded moved softly upwards, disclosing a mighty circular hall or room inside. Their crocodilian guide turned to them. "The Hall of the Martian Master," he hissed. They passed inside with him. The great hall seemed to extend upward to the giant cone's tip, thin light coming down from an opening there. Upon the dull metal of its looming walls were running friezes of lighter metal, grotesque representations of reptilian shapes that they could but vaguely glimpse. Around the walls stood rank after rank of guards. At the hall's center was a low dais, and in a semicircle around and behind it stood 100 great crocodilian shapes. Randall guessed even at the moment that they were the council of which their conductor had named himself a member. But like Milton and Lanier, he had eyes in that first moment only for the dais itself. For on it was the Martian Master. Randall heard Milton and Lanier choke with the horror that shook his own heart and brain as he gazed. It was not simply another great crocodilian shape that sat upon the dais. It was a monstrous thing formed by the joining of 3 of the great reptilian bodies. 3 distinct crocodile-like bodies sitting close together upon a metal seat that had but a great single head. A great grotesque crocodilian head that bulged backward and to either side, and that rested on the 3 thick short necks that rose from the triple body. And that head, that triple-bodied thing, was living, its unwinking eyes gazing at the 3 men. The Martian Master! Randall felt his brain reel as he gazed at that mind-shattering thing. The Martian Master, this great head with 3 bodies. Reason told Randall, even as he strove for sanity, that the thing was but logical, that even on Earth biologists had formed multiple-headed creatures by surgery, and that the Martians had done so to combine in one great head, one great brain, the brains of 3 bodies. Reason told him that the great triple brain inside that bulging head needed the bloodstreams of all 3 bodies to nourish it. Must be a giant intellect indeed, one fitted to be the supreme Martian Master. But reason could not overcome the horror that choked him as he gazed at that awful thing. A hissing voice sounding before him made him aware that the Martian Master was speaking.
You are the Earth beings with whom we communicated and whom we instructed to build a matter transmitter and receiver on Earth?
The slow voice asked this.
You have come safely to Mars by means of that station?
We have come safely. Milton's voice was shaken, and he could find no other words.
That is well. Long had we desired to have such a station built on Earth, since with it there to flash back and forth between the 2 worlds is easy. You have come, then, to learn of this world, and to take back what you learned to your races?
That is why we came, Milton said more steadily. We want to stay only hours on this first visit, and then flash back to Earth as we came. The head's awful eyes seemed to consider them.
But when do you intend to go back?
Its strange voice asked.
Unless the one at your Earth station has its receiver operating at the right moment, you will simply flash on endlessly as radio waves will be annihilated.
Milton found the courage to smile. We started from Earth at our midnight exactly, and at midnight exactly 24 Earth hours later we are to flash back and the receiver will be awaiting us. There was silence when he had said that. A silence that seemed to Randall's strained mind to have become suddenly tense, sinister. The great triple-bodied creature before them considered them again, its eyes moving over them, and when it spoke again, the hissing words came very slowly.
24 Earth hours,
it said.
And then your receiver on Earth will be awaiting you. That time we can measure to the moment, and that is well. For it is not you 3 Earth beings who will flash back to Earth when that moment comes. It will be Martians, the first of our Martian masses, who have waited for ages for that moment, and who will begin then our conquest of the Earth. Yes, Earth beings. Our great plan comes to its end now at last. At last. Age on age, prisoned on this dying, arid world, we have desired the Earth that by right of power shall be ours, have sought for ages to communicate with its beings. You finally heard us. You hearkened to us. You built the matter transmitting and receiving station on Earth. That was the one thing needed for our plan. For when the matter receiver of that station is turned on in 24 of your hours and ready to receive matter flashes from here, it will be the first of our millions who will flash at last to Earth. I, the Martian Master, say it. Those first to go shall seize that matter receiver on Earth when first they appear there, shall build other and larger receivers, and through them, within days, all our Martian hordes shall have been flashed to Earth, shall have poured out over it, and conquered with our weapons your weak races of Earth beings, who cannot stand before us, and whose world you have delivered at last into our hands."
For a moment, when that great monster's hissing voice had ceased, Milton and Randall and Lanier gazed toward it as though petrified, the whole unearthly scene spinning about them, and then, through the thick silence, the thin sound of Milton's voice. "Our world, our Earth, delivered to the Martians, and by us? God, no!" With that last cry of agonized comprehension and horror, Milton did what surely had never any in the great hall expected, leapt onto the dais with a single spring towards the Martian Master. Randall heard 100 wild hissing cries break from about him, saw the crocodilian forms of guards and council rushing forward, even as he and Lanier sprang after Milton, and then glimpsed shining tubes levelled from which brilliant shafts of dazzling crimson light or force were stabbing towards them. To Randall, the moment that followed was but a split-second flash and whirl of action. As his earthly muscles took him forward with Lanier after Milton in a great leap to the dais, he was aware of the brilliant red rays stabbing behind him closely, and knew that only the tremendous size of his leap had taken him past them. In the succeeding instant he was made aware of what he had escaped, for the hastily loosed rays struck squarely a group of 3 or 4 Martian guards rushing to the dais from the opposite side, and they vanished from view with a sharp detonation, as though clicked out of existence. Randall was not to know then that the red rays were ones that annihilated matter by neutralizing or damping the matter vibrations in the ether. But he did know that no more rays were loosed, for by then he and Milton and Lanier were on the dais and were wrapped in a hurricane combat with the guards that had rushed between them and the Martian Master. Gleaming fangs, great scaled forms, reaching talons, it was all a wild phantasmagoria of grotesque forms spinning around him as he struck with all the power of his earthly muscles, and felt crocodilian forms staggering and going down beneath his frenzied blows. He heard the roar of an automatic close behind him in the melee as Milton remembered at last, through the red haze of his fury, the weapon he carried. But before either Randall or Lanier could reach their own weapons, a new wave of crocodilian forms had poured onto them that by sheer pressing weight held them helpless to be disarmed. Hissing orders sounded. The arms and legs of the 3 were tightly grasped by the great taloned paws, and the masses of Martians about them melted back from the dais. Held each by 2 great creatures, Milton and Randall and Lanier faced again the triple-bodied Martian Master, who, in all that wild moment of struggle, appeared not to have changed his position. The big monster's black eyes stared unmovedly down at them.
"You Earth beings seem of lower intelligence even than we thought," his hissing voice informed them. "And those weapons, crude, very crude."
Milton, his face set, spoke back. "It may be that you will find human weapons of some power if your hordes reach Earth," he said.
"But what compared with the power of ours?" the other asked coldly. "And since our scientists even now devise new weapons to annihilate Earth's races, I think they would be glad of 3 of those races to experiment with now. The one use we can make of you, certainly."
The creature turned its bulging head a little towards the guards who held the three men, and uttered a brief hissing order. Instantly the 6 Martians, grasping the 3 tightly, marched them across the great hall, and through a different door than that by which they had entered. They were taken down a narrow corridor that turned sharply twice as they went on. Randall saw that it was inset in the walls by squares that glowed with crimson light. It came to him as they marched on that night must be upon the Martian city without, since the sun had been sinking when they had crossed it in the centipede machine. Through what seemed an anteroom they were taken, and then into a long hall instantly recognizable as a laboratory. There were many glowing squares illuminating it, and narrow windows high in the wall gave them a glimpse of the city outside, a pattern of crimson lights. Long metal tables and racks filled the big room's farther end, while along the walls were ranged shining mechanisms of unfamiliar and grotesque appearance. Fully a score of the crocodilian Martians were busy in the rooms, some intent on their work at the racks and tables, others operating some of the strange machines. The guards conducted the 3 to an open space by the wall, below one of the high window openings and between 2 great cylindrical mechanisms. Then, while 5 of their number held the 3 men prisoned in that space by the threat of their leveled ray tubes, the other moved toward one of the busy Martian scientists and held with him a brief interchange of hissing speech. Milton leaned to whisper to the other 2. "We've got to get out of this while we're still living," he whispered. "You heard the Martian master. In constructing that matter receiver on Earth, we've opened a door through which all the Martian millions will pour onto our world." "It's useless, Milton," said Randall dully. "Even if we got clear of this, the Martians will be at their matter transmitter in hordes when the moment comes to flash back to Earth." "I know that, but we've got to try," the other insisted. "If we or some of us could get clear of this, we might in some way hide near the matter transmitter until the moment came, and then fight to it." "But how to get out of the hands of these even?" asked Lanier, nodding towards the alert guards before them. "There's but one way," Milton whispered swiftly. "Our earthly muscles would enable us, I think, to get through this window opening above us in a leap, if we had a moment's chance. Well, whichever of us they take to experiment with or examine first must make a struggle or disturbance that will turn the guards' attention for a moment and give the other 2 a chance to make the attempt." "One to stay and the other 2 to get away," Randall said slowly. But Milton's tense whisper interrupted. "It's the only way, and even then 1,000 to 1 chance. But it's we who have opened the gate for this Martian invasion of our world, and it's we who must—" Before he could finish, the approach of hissing voices told them that the leader of the 6 guards and the Martian who seemed the chief of the experimenters in the hall were nearing them. The 3 men stood silent and tense as the 2 crocodilian monsters stopped before them. The scientist, who carried in his metal belt, instead of a ray tube, a compact case of instruments, surveyed them as though in curiosity. He came closer, his quick reptilian eyes taking in with evident interest every feature of their bodily appearance. Intuitively the 3 knew that one of them was to be chosen for a first investigation by the Martian scientists, and that one would have not even the slender hope of escape open to the other 2. A strange lottery of life and death. Randall saw the creature's gaze turn from one to another of them, and then heard the hiss of his voice as he pointed a taloned paw towards Milton. Instantly 2 of the guards had seized Milton and had jerked him out from the wall, the other guards holding back Randall and Lanier with threatening tubes. It was upon Milton that the fatal choice had fallen. Randall and Lanier made together a half-forward movement, but Milton, a tense message in his eyes, forced them back. The guards who held the physicist led him, at the direction of the Martian scientist, towards a great upright frame at the room's far end, upon which were clustered a score of dial indicators. From these flexible cords led. And now the scientist began attaching these by clips to various spots on Milton's body. Some mechanical examination of his bodily characteristics were apparently to be made. Milton shot suddenly a glance at the 2 by the wall, and his head nodded in an almost imperceptible signal. The muscles of Lanier and Randall tensed. Then abruptly Milton seemed to go mad. He shouted aloud in a terrible voice, and at the same moment tore from him the cords just attached, his fist striking out then at the amazed Martians around him. As they leapt back from that sudden explosion of activity and sound on Milton's part, the guards before Randall and Lanier whirled instinctively for an instant towards it. And in that instant the two had leapt. End of part 2.